I am sitting at the long oak dining table on Christmas Eve, holding a glass of deep crimson wine my daughter-in-law just poured for me. And the way she smiles, soft but too perfect, makes something inside my chest tighten as if a quiet alarm is going off beneath my ribs. For a moment, I tell myself I am imagining things. That grief and age play tricks even on men who think they have lived enough life to recognize danger. But then I lift the glass, intending merely to smell it the way I always do, and before it reaches my nose, everything changes. If you're listening to this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from. My son, Lucas, who has always moved through life with the silent steadiness of a man who plans before he acts, suddenly stands, bumps the edge of the table, and in a motion so swift I almost doubt it happened, he swaps my glass with the one in front of his wife, Elena. It takes no more than 2 heartbeats. No one else in the room notices, not my daughter, not her husband, not even Elena herself, but I see it, and for a moment my blood runs cold. Lucas returns to his place across from me. His eyes lock with mine, and what I find in them is not an accident, not clumsiness, but something sharp and conflicted, fear tangled with resolve, protection laced with fury. I do not drink. Elena does. A generous sip, then another, as if she is waiting for something to happen. 10 minutes later, exactly 10 minutes, she pushes back her chair, her complexion turning the color of wet paper. She excuses herself in a strained whisper and rushes to the bathroom. The sound of her footsteps fades, followed by the muffled chaos of someone fighting their own body. The others lift their glasses in a cheerful toast, unaware of the storm cracking open inside this house. I remain frozen, staring at my son. When he finally leans in, when he finally speaks, his voice is low and trembling. Dad, tomorrow morning, Christmas Day, I need to tell you something. Something that will change everything. My world, the one I spent more than 6 decades building, begins to tilt. A sickening understanding creeps in, that the betrayal I feared was nothing compared to the betrayal I had refused to even imagine. It keeps me going, knowing someone out there understands what it feels like when those you trust, those you welcome into your home, twist that trust into something cruel. Please, just tell me I'm not speaking into the void. My name is Richard Hale, and I am 65 years old. I have lived my entire life in the restless, beautiful city of Boston, where the winters are cold enough to remind a man of everything he has lost and everything he still stands to lose. I thought I would grow old peacefully, surrounded by the family I raised with devotion and the wealth I built brick by brick, contract by contract. I was wrong. Terribly, painfully wrong. And the truth my son is about to reveal, will show you how close I came to losing not just my dignity, not just my fortune, but my life. Before I tell you what happened the next morning, before the truth shattered whatever innocence I'd left, you need to know who I was before all this began. Because a betrayal like the one I lived through does not land in an empty heart. It lands in a life filled with memories, work, sacrifice, and the belief that family means safety. My name, as I told you, is Richard Hale, and I turned 65 this past autumn. I spent nearly my entire adulthood building a construction and urban development company from the ground up. I was not born into wealth, not even close. My father worked at the docks in a small coastal town in Maine, hauling ropes and crates until his hands looked like worn leather. My mother baked pies to sell at the weekend market. Out of 8 children, I was the first and only one to go to college. I studied engineering while working as a night janitor at a hotel. There were winters when I was so tired I fell asleep with textbooks still open on my chest, boots still on my feet. But little by little, the work paid off. First came single-family homes, then entire blocks, then commercial properties. After 4 decades, I owned several apartment buildings in Boston, 2 commercial complexes, a waterfront cabin in Maine, and a selection of investments my financial advisor once called a quiet little empire. I never thought of it as an empire. I thought of it as security for my wife, Laura, and for our 2 children, Lucas and Marissa. Laura, she was the center of everything. She had the rare ability to soften a room simply by entering it. She kept the family gatherings alive, especially Christmas Eve, her favorite night of the year. She passed away from heart failure 4 years ago, suddenly, brutally, without warning. The kind of loss that leaves a man standing alone in a house that suddenly feels too large for its walls. After she died, my children were my lifeline. Lucas, my eldest, became even more responsible, more protective, almost like he was trying to stand in the space his mother once held. Marissa, vibrant and compassionate, moved to San Diego with her husband, but she called me nearly every evening. Everything felt stable, fragile, but stable, until Lucas brought home the woman who would one day become my daughter-in-law. Her name was Elena Contreras, 35, social outreach coordinator, or at least that was her title. At first glance, she was charming, beautifully put together, soft-spoken but ambitious. When Lucas married her after a year of dating, I welcomed her with open arms. I paid for almost everything: the ceremony, the honeymoon in Portugal, and part of the down payment for the upscale condo they moved into. It felt natural. What else is a father supposed to do for his son when he has the means? But slowly, too slowly for my own good, things shifted. Elena began asking questions that were polite on the surface, but unsettling underneath. "Richard, this is a lot of house for one person. Don't you ever feel lonely in all these rooms? Have you given thought to what you'll do with your properties when you're, older?" "Lucas, darling, your father should really organize his affairs. It would make life easier for everyone." I brushed it off. People care about aging relatives. People worry. That is what I told myself. But then the questions became a pattern, always about my assets, my accounts, my long-term plans, my will. Even Lucas changed gradually. He visited less frequently. He spoke less freely. He seemed managed gently but persistently by Elena. Still, I forced myself not to see it. I told myself grief distorts reality. I told myself I was being unfair to a woman who simply wanted to be part of the family. Then came the supplements, the herbal teas, the vitamins I never asked for. Elena checking on my health daily, as if I were a fragile heirloom instead of a man who had, for more than 4 decades, climbed scaffolding taller than city buses. And then came December, the coldest December Boston had seen in years. Elena insisted Christmas Eve dinner be held at my home. To honor old traditions, she said. She arrived early with Lucas, carrying grocery bags and bottles of wine. She was overly cheerful, wearing an expensive amber perfume that filled the kitchen with sweetness bordering on suffocating. Lucas was quiet that night. Too quiet. Avoiding my eyes. Working around Elena like a shadow, trying not to be seen. By the time Marissa and her husband arrived and the house filled with music, laughter, and the glow of string lights, I almost convinced myself everything was fine. Almost. Because behind the warmth of the night, behind the clinking plates and cheerful carols, there was a strange urgency in Elena's movements. A strange anticipation in her eyes whenever she looked at me. And it would all lead to that one moment at the dinner table, the wine, the switch, the 10 minutes that changed everything. Christmas Eve dinner at my house had always been Laura's masterpiece. Even after her passing, I tried every year to honor the tradition, though I never managed to recreate her warmth. Still, when Lucas and Elena insisted we host it at my place again for old time's sake, I agreed. I wanted to believe things were normal, even when my instincts whispered otherwise. By the time we sat down to eat, the house looked almost magical. Amber lights flickering across garlands, the scent of roasted turkey drifting through the air, Marissa humming some old jazz tune from the living room. For a moment, I felt almost peaceful. But then Elena placed a freshly opened bottle of wine on the table and leaned close to me with that same practiced smile she wore whenever she wanted something. "Richard," she said, "I brought this one especially for you. A reserve Cabernet. Thought it would pair nicely with the meal." Her voice sounded warm, but her eyes flicked to Lucas, just for an instant, in a way that made something cold crawl up my spine. She filled my glass almost to the brim. Too generously. She rarely poured wine for anyone but herself. Yet tonight, she acted like a gracious sommelier. I turned the glass gently. The wine clung to the sides, dark and still. I lifted it toward my nose, intending to enjoy the aroma, an old habit of mine. But before I could inhale, movement flashed beside me. Lucas. He rose abruptly from his seat and reached as if to adjust the centerpiece, accidentally bumping the table. The plates rattled, cutlery shifted, and in a motion so quick I questioned whether I imagined it. He snatched my glass and replaced it with Elena's. No pause, no hesitation, just a swift, silent exchange followed by an apologetic laugh. Sorry, Dad, clumsy hands tonight. Clumsy? Lucas had never been clumsy a day in his life. I stared at him, and for a split second he let his mask slip. His eyes met mine, and what I saw in them made my heartbeat stutter. Urgency, fear, an unspoken plea. Trust me. Across the table, Elena watched me expectantly. She lifted her own glass, now the one Lucas had switched into my hand's reach, and offered a soft toast. To family, to health, to the years ahead. Everyone raised their glasses. I lifted mine too, but I did not drink. Elena did. A long, confident sip. Dinner continued. Laughter, conversation, plates being passed around, but I barely heard any of it. My mind remained anchored to that split-second glass switch. It hadn't been clumsy. It had been deliberate. Protective. I caught Lucas watching Elena several times, monitoring her reactions. Each time she glanced at me, impatience simmered behind her smile. Then, precisely 10 minutes later, it began. Elena's fork slipped from her hand. She blinked rapidly, swallowing hard. Her skin lost its color, replaced by a sickly pallor. Excuse me, she murmured, pressing a hand to her stomach. She stood, then nearly stumbled, and with a strangled sound, she hurried toward the hallway bathroom. A moment later, the unmistakable sounds of someone violently ill echoed through the house. Marissa rose immediately. I'll go check Dash. No, Lucas said quickly, placing a hand on his sister's arm. Just give her a minute. His tone was calm, but underneath it trembled something else, familiarity. He knew exactly what was happening to her. I stared at him. He stared back. And in that silent exchange, the truth began to form, a horrifying possibility I wasn't ready to accept. After nearly 20 minutes, Elena re-emerged. Her face glistened with cold sweat, her hands shaking lightly. She looked like someone who had run a marathon and lost. I'm so sorry, she whispered. Something didn't sit well. Lucas stood, supporting her by the elbow. We should get going, he said, his voice steadying with purpose. Thanks, Dad. Merry Christmas. He guided her toward the door. As I followed to see them out, he lingered behind her for a brief moment and whispered, so quietly I almost thought I imagined it. Tomorrow, Christmas morning, I'll tell you everything. Don't eat or drink anything she gives you. Please, Dad, just trust me. And then he left. The door shut. Silence expanded around me like a living thing. Only the faint hum of holiday lights and the distant sounds of neighbors celebrating filled the void. I sank into the nearest chair, overwhelmed by the weight of the unspoken truth. Whatever was in that wine, whatever Elena had expected me to drink, Lucas had saved me from it. But why? And how deep did the danger truly reach? Everything I thought I understood about my family, about my son's marriage, about my own safety began to crack. That night, I did not sleep. I sat alone in the glow of the Christmas tree, waiting for dawn, waiting for the truth that would break me. I watched the sky turn from black to bruised gray through my living room windows. I never went to bed. My mind replayed every detail of the night before. The wine, the too perfect smile, the switch, the 10 minutes, the panic in Elena's eyes, and the urgent whisper from my son. Tomorrow morning, I'll tell you everything. By the time morning arrived, the house felt like a hollow box filled with memories I suddenly wasn't sure I could trust. The Christmas tree lights blinked softly, mocking the warmth the holiday was supposed to bring. At exactly 7, my phone rang. Lucas, Dad, I'm coming over. Alone. I need to talk to you before anything else happens. Come, I told him. I'm waiting. I hung up and tried to steady my breath. Whatever he was carrying, the fear I saw in the night before, was heavy enough to change everything. At 9, I watched from the window as his truck pulled up to the curb. He didn't get out right away. He sat with both hands gripping the steering wheel, shoulders tense, head bowed. A man preparing for a confession he wished he didn't have to make. When he finally stepped out, I opened the door before he could knock. He didn't say Merry Christmas. He didn't hug me. He just walked inside, closing the door behind him as if shutting out a danger that might seep through the cracks. We faced each other in the living room, the morning light turning the space pale and cold. "Tell me," I said. My voice sounded older than I remembered. "Tell me what happened last night. Tell me why Elena drank whatever she meant for me." He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "Dad, she put something in your wine." I felt my heart thud, slow and heavy. "What was it?" "A strong dose of laxatives. Not enough to kill you, nothing like that, but enough to leave you humiliated, sick, weak. She wanted you trapped in the bathroom all night. She wanted Marissa and her husband to see you as a man losing control of his faculties." I stared at him, unable to speak. Humiliation, public weakness, a stage collapse in front of my children. Why would she do that? I whispered. Lucas sat down, elbows on his knees, hands trembling. "Because, Dad, Elena has been planning something for months, and I didn't see it until it was almost too late." He took out his phone, or what remained of it. The screen was cracked, dented, barely usable. "She didn't always know I was suspicious," he continued. "About 3 weeks ago, she left her phone on our kitchen counter. It buzzed nonstop. I thought she wanted to silence it, so I went to check, and I saw the name of a group chat." He closed his eyes, ashamed. "It was called Operation Hail. After our last name." I slid down my spine. I opened the chat, and when I tell you what I read, Dad, it changed everything I thought I knew about my wife. He handed me the phone. I scrolled through several screenshots he'd salvaged. Conversations long ones between Elena and 2 people I didn't recognize. A man named Gareth, a woman named Linda. Messages discussing my properties, my accounts, my insurance policy, which was worth more than $3 million. They talked about how isolated I'd become since Laura died, how pliable older men could be with the right emotional pressure. They even discussed ways to frame the narrative so my children would believe I needed a guardian. A legal guardian, one who could control my affairs. Lucas's voice cracked. They wanted me to be that guardian, or at least the legal figurehead. Elena planned to control everything behind the scenes. Every account, every deed, every asset. I stared at him. "And you knew all this?" He nodded, shame carving lines in his face. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself I misunderstood. But then I followed her one day. She met with Gareth and Linda in a cafe. I recorded their conversation. "Dad, they were coordinating how to get access to everything you own." He inhaled shakily. "And when I walked into the kitchen yesterday afternoon, I caught her pouring something into your wine bottle. She thought I'd gone outside. I confronted her. She lied, smiled, hugged me, pretended nothing happened. But I saw." My hands clenched into fists. "So you switched our glasses." "I had to," he whispered. "I couldn't confront her without evidence. And I couldn't let you drink what she'd prepared." Silence settled between us, thick and suffocating. Then the question I feared most escaped my lips. "Lucas, do you think she ever planned anything worse than humiliating me?" He didn't answer immediately, and the silence told me everything. Finally, he whispered. "They talked about accidents in the messages. Falls, stairs, things that wouldn't raise suspicion. Dad, I don't know if she would have gone through with it. But Gareth and Linda? They have no limits." The room spun slightly, as if the air itself had tilted. I was not just being manipulated. I was being stalked, financially, emotionally, strategically. Targeted. Lucas reached for my hand. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I didn't see it sooner. But I'm going to fix this. I promise." I squeezed his hand. "We'll fix it. Together." But inside, a darker truth pressed against my ribs. They weren't just after my wealth. They were after my autonomy, my dignity, my life. And they had no idea the trap they'd set was about to close on them instead. Lucas sat across from me, shoulders shaking, eyes rimmed red, a grown man carrying guilt that never should have been his. I'd spent my life building homes, structures meant to withstand storms, but nothing prepared me for the storm sitting in my living room that Christmas morning. "Dad, there's more," he said quietly. Things I didn't want to read, but I did. Things I wish I could unsee. He unlocked his damaged phone. The screen cracked like frozen water splintered across glass. He pulled up a folder labeled evidence. When he handed it to me, my hands trembled. Inside were screenshots, dozens of them, conversation threads between Elena and her partners in this twisted scheme. Gareth, an accountant with a clean smile and a dirty reputation, and Linda, a notary who had once been suspended for procedural misconduct, a polite phrase for forgery. The messages were meticulous, organized, strategic, as if my life had been turned into a business plan. One message from Gareth read, "He owns at least 6 properties, maybe more, 2 in waterfront districts. We need access before he updates anything." Linda replied, "The insurance is the real prize. Over $3 million. Once we get the guardianship filed, we can authorize transfers." Then Elena, "He avoids the topic of his will. He's stubborn. I'll push harder. He's older, set in his ways. He just needs a little nudge." A nudge, meaning pressure, meaning manipulation, meaning she saw me as prey. I felt a slow burn of humiliation crawl across my chest. These people didn't just want my money, they wanted control of the man I still was. A living man, a breathing man. "Keep scrolling," Lucas said softly. I did. The next set of messages chilled my blood more than the December wind outside. "Gareth, if the guardianship doesn't work, we consider other options. Something that looks natural." Linda, "Falls are very common at his age." Stares, "I've seen cases like that before." Elena, "We'll start with something simpler. Make him seem unwell in front of the kids. That opens the door." Then came the one that made my hand clench around the phone until my knuckles turned white. Elena, "Christmas Eve will be perfect. The laxatives will do the job. Once he breaks down in front of them, we move to step 2. My breath caught. "Step 2? I asked, voice unsteady. Lucas nodded, looking sick. "Dad, step 2 was the guardianship paperwork. Once that was in place, Gareth and Linda would have been able to drain everything. Slowly. Legally. And if you resisted, well, that's where the accident suggestions came in." I closed my eyes. For a moment, I wasn't in my living room anymore. I was on a staircase, slipping. I was lying on a cold floor, helpless. I was being talked about in past tense while strangers handled my estate. No. I opened my eyes again. Rage, fear, grief. They churned inside my ribs like a storm clawing at a door. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" I asked, more gently than I felt. Lucas's voice broke. "Because I couldn't believe the woman I married was capable of this. I kept hoping I was misunderstanding, that I was reading too much into things, that maybe Gareth and Linda were manipulating her." He swallowed hard. "But when I saw her pour that liquid into your wine, everything snapped into place. I couldn't let you drink it. I couldn't confront her without proof either, or she'd just call me paranoid. So I waited. I watched. I recorded her. I followed her." He ran a shaking hand through his hair. "And now we have enough to destroy her. But we have to be smart." I leaned forward, heartbeat slowing into something colder, clearer. "What do we do?" Lucas pulled a small notebook from his jacket, scribbled with dates, phone numbers, conversation summaries. He had been documenting everything for weeks. My son, the quiet one, the serious one, had been living alongside a viper and preparing for war without telling a soul. "First," he said, "you need to change every password you've ever used. Banking, investment accounts, email, everything. She knows too much about your life." I nodded. "Second, call your attorney today. Have him review your will, your property titles, and any documents that might have been tampered with. We can't risk a forged signature slipping through." "I'll call him as soon as we finish talking," I said. Lucas exhaled in relief. "Third, we set a trap. I'll tell Elena you're thinking of granting me power of attorney. Something temporary, just in case of emergencies. It'll make her feel like the plan is working. So she'll let her guard down," I said. "Exactly. And when she does, she'll start pushing harder, talking more openly, pressuring me." manipulating, and I'll record every single word. I stared at him for a long moment. You're sure you want to do this? His jaw tightened. I'm the one who brought her into this family, he said. I'm the one who trusted her. I'm the one who didn't see the signs. Dad, I have to do this. I reached out and placed my hand on his. We do it together. His eyes softened, filling with grief and determination all at once. Then we move carefully, he said. 3 weeks. Maybe 2. That's all the time we need to gather every piece of evidence. And when we're ready, he looked toward the door, as if envisioning the battle ahead. We take all of them down. Legally. Completely. I nodded slowly. But beneath the resolve, one truth pulsed painfully. If Elena even suspected the truth, if she sensed the walls closing in, she might do something desperate. And that meant the clock had already started ticking. After Lucas left that Christmas morning, the house became unbearably silent. The ornaments still glimmered on the tree. The faint scent of turkey lingered in the kitchen, and the holiday music playlist Marissa had put on last night now felt like a taunt. Christmas had never felt colder. But I couldn't sit in shock. Not anymore. Not after what I had learned. I gathered the printouts, screenshots, and notes Lucas had given me and placed them all into a folder. Then I opened a fresh notebook and began writing everything I remembered from the last several months. Every strange comment, every uncomfortable question Elena asked me about money, every helpful supplement she pushed in my hands. I wrote until my fingers cramped. Then I called my attorney, Harold Brennan, a man I had known for more than 20 years. He wasn't just a lawyer. He was one of the few people I trusted without hesitation. He answered on the second ring. Richard, he said, it's Christmas. Is everything all right? No, I admitted. I need to see you. Today. It's urgent. There was a pause. Harold had always been sharp, the kind of man who could hear danger even when it wasn't spoken aloud. Come in 2 hours, he said. I'll be ready. I arrived at Harold's home office bundled in a winter coat, the streets still dusted with morning frost. He took one look at my face, gestured me inside, and closed the door quietly behind us. You look like you saw a ghost, he said. Not a ghost, I answered. Something worse. I sat down and told him everything, the wine, the switch, the messages, the mention of accidents, the plan for guardianship. I handed him the folder. He read silently, his expression darkening with every screenshot. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair and removed his glasses. Good Lord, Richard, this is a full-scale criminal conspiracy. I know, I whispered. And you're lucky, very lucky. If your son hadn't intervened, they might have succeeded. For the first time that day, my voice cracked. I wasn't ready to believe it. Even after the comments, after the way she hovered, I never thought Elena was capable of something like this. Harold sighed. People will do extraordinary things for money, especially when they believe they deserve what someone else has earned. He stood and walked to a tall bookshelf, retrieving a binder. Here's what we're going to do, he said. Today, not tomorrow. He outlined a series of steps, fast, strategic, airtight. First, Harold said, we place immediate alerts on all your properties. Any request for transfer, lien, or valuation will be routed through me directly. No exceptions. He typed rapidly as he spoke. Second, we contact your banks. We'll put restrictions on all major transactions. From now on, nothing above $2,000 can be moved without your physical presence and a secondary verification call to my office. He glanced at me. She's already been trying to isolate you emotionally. If she managed to isolate you legally, well, you know where this could have gone? I nodded, throat tight. Third, he continued, you are going to change every password you own, and you will not tell anyone except me where those new credentials are stored. And fourth, you and your son continue gathering evidence. The more she talks, the deeper she digs her own grave. But you must act normal, calm, predictable. You cannot give her any sign that you know. Harold leaned forward, voice dropping. Richard, this woman is dangerous, and so are the people helping her. Gareth and Linda have been mentioned in other complaints, allegations from elderly clients, suspicious transfers, unexplained debt. Nothing that stuck, but enough to raise my alarm bells. If they feel cornered, they may escalate. The word escalate left a pit in my stomach. What do you mean? I mean, you do not go anywhere alone with her, he said. You do not accept food from her. You do not let her visit unexpectedly. And you keep your phone on you at all times. Understood. I nodded. After 3 hours of reviewing my documents, setting protections, and signing new security authorizations, Harold placed a firm hand on my shoulder. You're safe for now, he said, but you must stay ahead of them. This type of scheme doesn't unravel gently. When the trap starts closing, they often lash out. I thanked him and left, stepping into the frigid winter air with a mix of dread and determination churning in my chest. When I got home, there were 2 missed calls from Elena and 1 voicemail. Richard, this is Elena. I just wanted to check on you after dinner last night. I hope you're not feeling under the weather. I felt awful later. Maybe we should meet this week to talk about some family matters. Her voice was syrupy, sweet, composed. But beneath that surface, I heard it. Frustration. Impatience. A woman whose plan had not gone the way she expected. I deleted the voicemail. That night, Lucas texted me. She bought the story. She thinks you're just tired. She has no idea what's coming. Tomorrow, she'll start pushing again. I'll record everything. Stay alert, Dad. We're close. Close, but also closer to danger. I went to bed with the lights on. For the first time in my life in my own home, I didn't feel safe. The days following Christmas were some of the strangest in my life. Nothing looked different. The streets were still covered in slushy snow. The neighbors still wore their bright scarves. The cafes downtown still overflowed with people escaping the cold, and yet everything felt different. Elena called me twice within the first 2 days. Each call followed the same pattern, sweetness wrapped in performance. Richard, how are you feeling? You sounded a little off during dinner. Are you sure everything's all right? You must take better care of yourself, you know. She lingered on the word care in a way that made my stomach knot. I answered with small, clipped replies. I'm fine, just tired. Maybe something disagreed with me. Each time, she hesitated before ending the call, as if waiting for me to admit weakness. When I didn't, she grew noticeably more frustrated. Lucas updated me through short, coded messages. She's restless. Meetings planned with Gareth and Linda. She still thinks you're easier to manipulate than you are. On the 4th day after Christmas, Lucas and Elena came to visit. I had prepared myself the way Harold advised. Calm, neutral, not overly chatty. The moment Elena walked into the house, I smelled her perfume, that same overly sweet amber scent, followed by her bright, too wide smile. Richard, she said warmly, we brought something for you. She held up a freshly baked lemon loaf, still warm, wrapped in a cloth. I thanked her, set it on the counter, and made a mental note to throw it away later. Let's sit in the living room, I said. Elena settled onto the couch, crossing one leg over the other with practiced elegance. Lucas sat beside her, posture rigid. I could tell he was recording, probably using the micro device he'd shown me hidden inside the inner lining of his jacket. After a few minutes of small talk, Elena steered the conversation exactly where we expected. Richard, she said gently, Lucas and I have been talking. With the way you've been feeling lately, you know, age creeping in a little, it might be time to organize your financial protections. I gave her a patient smile. My finances are already in order. She waved a hand. Oh, of course. But I mean something more accessible. Something that allows Lucas to help you quickly in case of emergency. Power of attorney, for example. My heart beat hard, but I kept my face calm. And why do you think I need that? I asked. Her smile felt sharper than her words. Because we care about you, Richard. We want to make sure you're not overwhelmed by responsibilities at this stage in your life. You have so many properties, so many holdings, it's a lot for one man to manage. I looked at Lucas. He kept his expression carefully neutral, but his fingers tapped once against his knee, a signal. She's pressing. Keep her talking. Elena, I said slowly, I appreciate the concern, but I don't see the need. A flicker, subtle but unmistakable, appeared in her eyes. Annoyance. Well, she said with a light laugh, I only ask because sometimes you forget things. Last month you misplaced your keys, and last week you mentioned losing track of an appointment. These are signs, Richard. I nearly laughed. Misplacing keys was suddenly grounds for legal guardianship. Those are normal things, I replied. Anyone can misplace something. Elena shifted her approach. And what about your will? She asked casually. Shouldn't Lucas and Marissa know what it says? Just to avoid confusion later. No, I said simply. My will is between me and my attorney. When the time comes, everything will be clear. Her smile froze. Lucas leaned back slightly. His jaw tightened, another silent signal. She was showing her hand more openly than expected. Elena tried one more angle. You know, Richard, sometimes accidents happen. People your age dash. Lucas cut her off sharply. Elena, enough. Her head whipped toward him. I was only trying to help, she said defensively. Lucas let the silence stretch, and in that moment, I realized something important. She no longer had control over him. Not the way she once did. That alone put panic behind her eyes. After a few more uncomfortable minutes, Elena stood abruptly. We should go, she announced. Richard, think about what I said. It's important. For all of us. I nodded politely. I'll consider it. A lie she swallowed whole. Once they left, Lucas texted me immediately. Perfect. Every word captured. She's getting desperate. Next step soon. But desperation is dangerous. And although we were tightening the net, Elena wasn't going down quietly. The following week unfolded like a tightrope walk across a canyon. One misstep, one misplaced word, and everything could collapse. Elena grew more insistent, more calculating, more watchful. Meanwhile, Lucas recorded every exchange, every suggestive phrase, every pointed attempt she made to corner me into vulnerability. But recording her wasn't enough. We needed the full picture. Her meetings, her co-conspirators, her communications, everything that tied her to Gareth and Linda. Lucas took on that burden. He told Elena he needed fresh air after the holidays and began going on morning jogs. In reality, he was following her, discreetly, carefully, always staying far enough that she wouldn't sense him, but close enough to catch every move. On the second morning, he texted me. She's at a cafe on River Street. Meeting Gareth. An hour later. Got audio. That evening, he came to my house to debrief. He set his phone between us at the kitchen table, and with a deep breath, pressed play. I had never heard Gareth's voice before. It was smooth, cold, dripping with the kind of arrogance found only in people who believe they'll never be caught. You need to push the old man harder, Gareth said. He's resisting. We can't drag this out forever. Elena replied, her voice lower than usual, sharpened. He's stubborn, but he's tired. His kids think he's slowing down. I can use that. I flinched hearing the confidence in her tone. How easily she spoke about me, as though I were a business obstacle rather than her husband's father. Linda's voice joined in, a woman's tone, clipped impatient. The guardianship petition is ready. We just need him to show signs of incompetence. The Christmas plan should have worked. You didn't give enough, Gareth added. He should have been incapacitated. Elena hissed a frustrated breath into the recording. I gave him plenty. He must not have finished the glass. But next time, dash. Lucas stopped the audio. Next time, he repeated softly. She was planning a next time. I felt ice crawl through my chest. What else did you get? Lucas hesitated. There's more, but you need to be prepared. He played the next segment. Gareth said, if he won't sign willingly, we consider the alternatives we discussed. My breath caught. Alternatives. Linda responded. Stairs, icy steps, health scares. There are plenty of believable ways for accidents to happen at his age. Elena didn't object. She didn't hesitate. She simply asked, and if Lucas gets suspicious? Gareth answered without missing a beat. He won't. Not if you keep him occupied. You know how to handle him. Lucas stopped the audio again. This time his hands shook. Dad, they were counting on me. Counting on me being blind. I lived with her, slept beside her, trusted her, and she knew I wouldn't see it until it was too late. I reached across the table and put my hand over his. You saw it when it mattered, I said. You saved my life. But inside, I felt something break, a mixture of betrayal and gratitude, fury and helplessness. We spent the next hour labeling recordings, transcribing key lines, and backing everything up into encrypted drives. Lucas worked with a precision I hadn't seen in him before, driven not just by justice, but by the guilt of having loved someone who never loved him back. Before he left that night, Lucas stood in my doorway, rubbing the back of his neck. She's going to escalate soon, he said. Gareth is pressuring her, and Linda wants paperwork filed fast. I'm ready, I replied, though my voice betrayed the tremor in my chest. Be careful, he said. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't open the door for anyone except me or Marissa. And if Elena shows up, unexpectedly dash. I'll call you immediately. He nodded, relieved but still tense. As he stepped out into the cold evening, I watched his shoulders slump under a burden no man his age should carry. The son I'd raised to be gentle and honorable had been forced into the role of investigator, spy, and protector, all because of the woman he'd chosen to love. The next morning, I received a text from Elena. Richard, I'd like to stop by later today to talk. It's important. My stomach tightened. She was pushing again. The timing, the urgency, the tone, all signs Harold warned me about. When people who rely on manipulation sense they're losing ground, they don't slow down. They accelerate. I didn't respond. Instead, I set my phone down and locked every door in my house. I checked the windows, the back entrance, even the sliding doors near the garden. For the first time in my life, my home, the place I had built with my own hands and my own sweat, didn't feel like a sanctuary. It felt like a stage, a place where danger was rehearsing its next move. And I knew, with a growing certainty in my chest, that Elena wasn't just going to try again. She was going to push harder than ever. And she wasn't coming alone. Elena's message lingered on my phone like a shadow. Richard, I'd like to stop by later today to talk. It's important. Important. That word felt less like a request and more like a warning. Harold's voice echoed in my mind. When manipulators lose control, they lash out. I didn't reply. Didn't plan to. Around noon, Lucas texted me. She's on edge. Gareth is pushing her hard. She knows time is running out. Then another. Dad, be careful today. Those words became a tight band around my ribs. The afternoon passed quietly, too quietly. Every creak in the house made me jump. I kept my phone in my pocket, a heavy reassurance. I even moved a chair near the front door in case I needed to barricade it, something I never imagined doing in my own home. By early evening, clouds rolled in, dimming the daylight, and for a moment I let myself breathe. Maybe she wasn't coming after all. Then, at 7:43, my phone rang. Lucas. His voice was frantic. Dad, she knows. My heart lurched. She knows what? She found the recorder. She went through my jacket while I was in the shower. She heard everything. She found the screenshots. Dad, she went crazy. A cold wave washed over me. What happened? We argued. She was screaming. She said I betrayed her. His voice cracked. She broke my phone. Smashed it. Dad, she grabbed a knife. I felt the blood drain from my face. Where are you right now? In the apartment. I locked myself in the bedroom, but she's pounding on the door. Dad, I need you. Please come now. I'm on my way, I said, already throwing on my coat. No, wait. Don't come up alone. Text me when you arrive. I'll meet you outside if I can. Then I heard it, through the phone, muffled but unmistakable, Elena's rage echoing through the apartment. You ruined everything, Lucas. Everything. I ran to my truck, heart thundering, hands trembling so hard I struggled with the keys. The drive to their place was a blur of red lights, snowy roads, and fear I'd never known before. When I reached the building, I texted him, outside. I'm here. No answer. I texted again. Nothing. Fear tightened around my chest like a vice. I bolted into the building, up the stairwell, 2 steps at a time, my breath ragged. By the time I reached their floor, I could hear shouting from the hallway. I pounded on their door. Lucas, it's Dad. The door cracked open. Lucas stood there, lip split, cheek bruised, breathing hard. Behind him, the apartment was in shambles. Broken dishes, overturned chairs, glass glittering on the floor. And in the center of it all, Elena. Her hair was wild, her eyes bloodshot, her face twisted with a fury that barely looked human. In her right hand, she held a kitchen knife, fingers clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. When she saw me, she let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Well, look at that, she snarled. The guest of honor finally arrived. Elena, I said slowly, keeping my voice steady, put the knife down. Oh, please, she snapped. You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know what you two have been doing behind my back? Recording me? Stalking me? Setting me up? You did this to yourself, Lucas said hoarsely. Elena turned on him, eyes blazing. Shut up. You were supposed to trust me. You were supposed to stand with me. Instead, you sided with him. An old man clinging to money he doesn't deserve. That struck me harder than the cold outside. I stepped forward. Elena, you need to stop. It's over. Over, she hissed. Oh no, Richard. You don't get to say when it's over. If you had just signed the damn papers, I raised my hand. I don't owe you anything. That broke something in her. She lunged. Lucas grabbed my arm, jerking me back as Elena swung the knife, the metal flashing under the hall light. She screamed, high, ragged, animalistic. Lucas shoved a chair between them. She stumbled, dropped the knife, then collapsed to her knees, sobbing and cursing at the same time. It was in that moment, her ragged breaths, the defeated trembling in her shoulders, that the distant wail of sirens reached us. I called the police, Lucas said, voice shaking. Before you got here, when the officers arrived, Elena was still on the floor, hands covering her face, repeating the same words. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't supposed to happen. The knife lay beside her, cold and silent. The officers handcuffed her gently, but firmly. She didn't resist. She didn't speak. She didn't even look up as they led her out the door. Once she was gone, Lucas sank onto the couch, head in his hands. It's over, he whispered. But I knew, even as relief washed over me, that this was only the beginning. The conspiracy wasn't just hers. It had roots, connections, accomplices. And now, with Elena exposed, Gareth and Linda would do everything they could to save themselves. The storm wasn't ending. The storm was just changing shape. The hours after Elena's arrest felt unreal, as though I'd stepped out of my life and into someone else's nightmare. Lucas spent that night at my house. He didn't want to return to the apartment. The shattered dishes, the broken glass, the lingering echo of Elena's screams. He looked exhausted, hollowed out, leaning against my kitchen counter while I warmed water for tea neither of us ended up drinking. I can't believe it, he whispered. I knew she was dangerous, but I didn't think she would dash. He stopped himself, the memory of her lunging forward still fresh. She's not the woman I married, Dad. Or maybe she is, and I just never saw it. I placed a hand on his shoulder. You saw her clearly when it mattered most. That's what saved me. He nodded, but the guilt in his eyes didn't fade. The next morning, we went straight to Harold's office. He ushered us in without pleasantries. He already knew what had happened. I spoke to the officers last night, Harold said as soon as we sat down. They confirmed she was taken in for questioning. But you should both know something important. Once she realizes she's cornered, she will start talking. Lucas frowned. Talking about what? Her accomplices, Gareth and Linda. People like Elena don't go down alone. That truth landed hard. Harold slid a stack of documents across the desk. We file immediately. Criminal charges, restraining orders, asset protection reinforcement. But we also need a hand over everything you've collected: recordings, screenshots, meeting logs. Lucas placed the flash drives and his notes on the table. Harold examined one of the devices. You two have enough evidence to make this an airtight case, he said. Not just against Elena, but against the whole operation. I exhaled slowly, part relief, part dread. What happens next? We move fast, he said. Very fast, because Gareth and Linda may already know Elena has been arrested. If so, they're going to panic. People like them always make mistakes when they panic. And they did. That afternoon, police tracked Gareth's phone. He had driven out of Boston toward a suburban storage facility, a place officers later discovered was one of the hubs for his fraudulent activity. When they searched the unit, they found falsified documents, forged signatures, and files linked to several elderly victims across the state. Linda wasn't far behind. She'd fled to her cousin's home 2 towns over. Officers found her trying to shred papers in the garage. By the next morning, both were in custody. The case grew exponentially. Detectives uncovered forged property transfer requests, doctored wills, and audio recordings of Gareth discussing ways to make accidents look natural. It turned out I wasn't the only target, just the largest. One man's body had been exhumed for re-examination. a retired teacher in his 70s. His fall down a staircase had been ruled accidental at the time. Now, investigators weren't so sure. The weight of it all settled on my shoulders like wet stone. For weeks I struggled to sleep, replaying every detail of Elena's words, wondering how close I had come to joining those victims. A week after the arrests, Lucas and I sat in Harold's office again. He handed us printed transcripts from the recordings we provided. "This," he said, tapping the pages, "is the backbone of our case." He read aloud a portion from Elena's conversation with Gareth. "Once Richard looks weak in front of his children, guardianship will be easy. Lucas won't question it. He trusts me. After that, the door's open." I closed my eyes. The betrayal, even on paper, cut deep. "Harold," I said quietly, "they wanted to break me down piece by piece. Not just steal from me, erase my dignity." He nodded solemnly. "That's how these operations work. They target isolation, grief, age. They push until the victim begins doubting their own judgment. But they underestimated you. And they certainly underestimated your son." Lucas looked down at his hands, his voice barely above a whisper. "I should have protected my father sooner." Harold leaned forward. "You protected him exactly when it mattered. Most people never get that chance." There was silence. Then Harold cleared his throat and straightened the papers. "Now comes the next phase. Indictment, formal charges, preparing for trial. With everything you've recorded and everything the police found, Elena and her accomplices are facing serious prison time. And us?" I asked. "What do we do?" "You stay steady," Harold answered. "You stay alert. And you don't let fear dictate your choices. The law is on your side now. And so are we." He paused. "Richard, you're not just a victim in this case. You're the one who stopped them. That matters." Lucas placed a hand on my arm. "And we're going to see this through, Dad. All the way." As we left Harold's office, I felt something shift inside me. Not peace, not yet, but a new sense of determination. The story wasn't over. The battle had only begun. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Or perhaps my sense of time had become distorted by stress, fear, and the abrupt rupture of everything I thought I knew about family. Within a month, prosecutors built a case so detailed and damning it read, like a blueprint of criminal intent. They charged Elena, Gareth, and Linda with conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted extortion, document forgery, exploitation of an elder, and in Gareth's case, suspicion of involvement in at least one accidental death. The courtroom became a place I had both dreaded and needed to be. I sat beside Lucas through every hearing, every pretrial meeting. Marissa flew in twice, her eyes red with worry, yet filled with fierce resolve. When the trial finally began, the room felt colder than winter itself. Walls thick with tension, air heavy with the weight of betrayal. Elena walked in wearing the standard beige prison uniform, her hair pulled back, her expression strained but defiant. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at Lucas either. Instead, she stared straight ahead, jaw tight, as though clinging to the last thread of a story she'd built for herself. Gareth appeared smug, even in handcuffs. Linda avoided everyone's gaze, her lips tightly pressed together, perhaps realizing too late the consequences of her choices. The prosecution began with something simple: the recordings Lucas had gathered. Hearing Elena's voice through the courtroom speakers made my skin crawl. He'll be humiliated. Once he shows weakness, guardianship is easy. Lucas won't question it. He trusts me. Lucas flinched beside me. Then Gareth's voice. "If he doesn't sign willingly, we consider the alternatives. Stairs, health events, it has to look natural." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Linda added, "Elderly men with high blood pressure have accidents all the time." Every word was a knife. Every sentence stripped away another layer of the illusion I'd once believed in. The prosecutor then revealed evidence found in Gareth's storage facility: forged documents, draft copies of transfers in my name, and even a forged letter template meant to mimic my handwriting. My stomach twisted when I saw it. Elena's attorney attempted a weak defense. Stress, manipulation by Gareth, claims that she never intended harm. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury saw it. The judge saw it. Everyone saw it. The trial stretched on for days that felt like months. Finally, after long deliberation, the jury returned. Guilty. On every count. Elena was sentenced to 12 years. Gareth received 15. Linda, 13. As the judge read the verdict, I felt no triumph. Only a deep, trembling gratitude that justice had found its way through a maze of lies. When bailiffs led Elena away, she turned slightly, just enough for our eyes to meet. There was no hatred in her gaze, no fury, only emptiness, a hollow recognition of a life unraveled by choices she couldn't undo. After the trial, the world didn't magically become brighter. Healing isn't immediate. It is slow, uneven, and often painful. Lucas refused to return to the apartment he once shared with her. He sold it within weeks, choosing instead a modest unit far from the shadows of his old life. When he invited me over for the first time, the space felt bare, no stage decorations, no perfect furniture, no carefully curated aesthetic. But it felt honest. And honesty was something he hadn't lived with for far too long. One evening, as we ate takeout noodles out of paper cartons, he sighed deeply. "Dad, do you ever think I'll trust again? Really trust?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "But not quickly, and not the same way. You'll trust differently. Wiser, slower, but stronger." He nodded, though there was sadness in his smile. Meanwhile, I began therapy at Harold's suggestion. A man named Dr. Rowan, calm and soft-spoken, helped me process the shock and the cracks Elena had carved into my sense of safety. "Trauma doesn't erase your strength," he told me. "It just rearranges it." I wasn't sure what that meant at first, but over time I understood. 6 months after the trial, a letter arrived at my door. The return address, State Correctional Institution. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Elena. For hours, I let the envelope sit on my dining table, torn between disgust and an unexpected curiosity. Eventually, I opened it. The letter was long, messy, written in uneven strokes, a far cry from the polished, composed Elena I once knew. She wrote about her childhood, about poverty, about the belief that money equaled safety. She wrote about meeting Gareth and Linda, how the thrill of easy schemes blurred her moral lines. And she wrote about Lucas. "I love him at first," she admitted, "but ambition swallowed everything else. And once I started down that path, I didn't know how to stop." She ended with, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you find peace. I hope Lucas heals. And I hope the world you rebuild is one I never deserved to be part of." I folded the letter, not out of forgiveness, but out of a strange, quiet acceptance that closure sometimes comes packaged in sorrow. The past was behind us, but the future, that was still ours to shape. The months following Elena's sentencing felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful at first, more like the silence after an explosion when your ears still ring and you're unsure whether the danger has truly passed. I spent that time rebuilding, piece by piece, not just my home or my finances, but something far more fragile, my sense of trust in the world. Through therapy with Dr. Rowan, I learned that trauma behaves like an echo, loud at first, then softer over time, yet capable of returning when least expected. Some nights, I still woke up imagining Elena's voice or Garrett's cold, calculating tone. But each session helped me reclaim a bit of myself. "You don't need to erase what happened," Dr. Rowan said once. "You need to grow around it." And slowly I did. Lucas visited often during those months, sometimes with takeout containers, sometimes with updates about work, sometimes just because he didn't want to spend the evening alone. There were moments when he'd fall into silence, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. One night, while sitting on my back porch under a pale spring moon, he said quietly, "Dad, I still feel stupid." I turned to him. "You're not stupid." I didn't see who she really was. I shook my head gently. "Good people never expect betrayal, son. That doesn't make them foolish. It makes them human." He allowed a long, shaky breath. "I hope I can trust again." "You will," I told him, "because you already know what danger looks like. And more importantly, you know what real love should not feel like." His shoulders relaxed at those words. Healing, I realized, wasn't only mine to do. It belonged to him too. Marissa began visiting more regularly as well. She was furious when she first heard the full story, not angry at Lucas, but the thought that any of us had endured something so dark without knowing how close disaster had come. "Dad," she told me one afternoon as we walked through a small farmer's market, "I don't know how you kept your composure all those months." I didn't, I admitted. I just hid it well. She squeezed my arm. "Well, you don't have to hide anything anymore." Her presence became a comfort, steady, grounded, warm in ways I hadn't realized I needed. As time passed, something unexpected happened. People began reaching out to me, strangers, mostly individuals who had heard about the case when it made regional news. Some were elderly, some were caregivers, some were adult children worried about their own aging parents. They wanted advice, reassurance, guidance. At first, I felt unqualified. I was simply a man who'd survived something terrible, nothing more. But Harold encouraged me. "Richard," he said, "you have experience most people never want, but many desperately need. Use it." And so I did. I joined a local support group for seniors navigating financial fraud and elder abuse. Later, I was invited to speak at a community center about protecting oneself from exploitation. Then a nonprofit asked if I would consider recording a short video about recognizing early signs of manipulation. Every time I shared my story, people approached me afterward with tears in their eyes, men and women who had seen pieces of their lives reflected in mine. "You made me realize I'm not crazy," one woman in her 70s whispered as she hugged me. "My grandson keeps pressuring me about my will, and now I know I need help." I guided her toward trustworthy legal support. Moments like that gave meaning to the suffering I'd endured. If my pain had a purpose, maybe it wasn't all destruction. Meanwhile, Lucas began rebuilding his own life. He moved into a smaller, sunnier apartment on the other side of the city, a place filled with plants, light wood furniture, and an air of gentle new beginnings. He even started dating again, cautiously, slowly, intentionally. "Nothing serious," he told me once, though his smile said otherwise. "But she's kind and real, and that's enough for now." Seeing him smile again softened something inside me, a knot I'd carried since the night he called me begging for help. As for me, I discovered something surprising. There was still joy to be found, not in grand gestures, but in simple things: the quiet hum of early morning coffee, the sound of Marissa's laughter over the phone, the way Lucas's shoulders finally loosened when he talked about the future instead of the past. And then came another letter. From Elena. This time, shorter. "I heard about the community work you're doing. I hope it helps people. I hope it brings healing. I'm trying too. I'm not who I was, but I'm not who I want to be yet either. I'm sorry for the pain. I know sorry is small, but it's all I have here." I sat with that letter for a long time. I didn't forgive her, but I didn't feel rage anymore either. Instead, I felt a quiet release, a sense that the past no longer controlled me. One warm summer evening, Lucas and Marissa joined me for dinner. We sat on my terrace, soft lanterns swaying in the breeze, a familiar comfort in their gentle light. We laughed about childhood memories, argued about the best baseball teams, planned a small weekend trip. Not once did we mention Elena. Not once did her shadow cross the table. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I raised my glass, a simple sparkling cider, and said, "To family, the real kind, the kind that stands beside you when life shakes apart." Lucas lifted his glass. "To truth," Marissa added, "to second chances." We clinked our glasses, a small, steady sound, the sound of closure. Later that night, as I sat alone under the stars, I thought about the long path from devastation to healing. I thought about the fear, the betrayal, the nights I stayed awake wondering if the world was as cruel as it felt. But then I thought about this. I survived. My family survived. And somehow, we found purpose in the ruin. So if someone were listening to my story now, I would offer them this. You can walk through darkness and still come out whole. You can be betrayed and still trust again. You can lose your way and still rebuild a life worth living. Because strength isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes, it's simply choosing to wake up the next morning, choosing to keep going, choosing to believe in goodness again, even when the world has shown you its worst. I am an old man now, with silver hair and lines carved deep into my skin, but I feel more alive, more awake than I have in years. Not because life is perfect, but because I learned that survival is its own kind of triumph. And that true family, the ones who stand beside you when everything collapses, are worth every ounce of protection, every moment of gratitude. As I watched the sky darken and felt the cool night settle in, I whispered a quiet thank you to life, to resilience, to the second chance I never expected to receive. And with that, my story, this chapter of it, found its ending. Not in bitterness, not in fear, but in peace. Now, if you've stayed with me through this entire journey, through the fear, the betrayal, the fight, and the healing, I want to leave you with something I wish someone had told me long before all of this happened. Protect what is yours. Protect your heart, your home, your dignity, your future. Not with paranoia, but with awareness. Listen to your instinct, that quiet alarm that whispers when something feels wrong. Trust the people who prove themselves through actions, not just words. And when the world shows you its cruelty, remember this. You can survive. You can rebuild. You can rise again. If my story reached you today, tell me where you're listening from. Not because I need recognition, but because none of us should walk through darkness alone. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And you are not alone.